So at the beginning of the semester, I told you you're supposed to do two different things. One thing, you need to make an assessment item, right? So after developing your assessment item, you're supposed to develop assessment standard. But before forwarding toward, moving forward, assessment standard, I'm going to briefly summarize what is the problem, or what is the problematic situation. So regarding the problem, especially related to develop your mathematical essay problem for the final project, I'm going to tell you something related to that. Take a look, for instance, what is the definitions a problem? What is a problem? There are many different kinds of definition about the problem, but probably this definition might be helpful for you to think about your mathematical essay problem for your final projects. So, what do you think? First of all, based on your experience during the semester, half of semesters, what is the problem? I differentiate in the problem the differences between problem and exercise at the beginning of the semester. Do you remember that part? Right? While I'm explaining in STEAM standard, right? So what do you think? What is the problem from your perspective as of now? 시연 학생 이시연, 올팀. Kind of old knowledge students developed already, do you think? I think student pointed out several important things from my perspective. I think I brought one definition might be useful for you to think about mathematical problem. A mathematical problem, to be effective, should confront a student with an authentic but manageable difficulty. Make sense? So what is the meaning of difficulty, right? But the meaning that the question itself must both be well understood and seem significant, but that the solution must be unknown. So this is one of the definition mathematical problem. So here's one important thing: authentic but manageable difficulty, right? So in order to make any mathematical essay problem, you should consider how much level do you need to consider to develop mathematical essay problem, right? That is one of the important things. However, that should be authentic and manageable. Do you understand what is the manageable, right? Also, the question itself both to be well understood. That is obvious, right? It should not use any professional word which student cannot be understand, right? Obviously, the problem itself, right, should be well understood by student. Also what? Seem significant. What is the meaning of significance? In Korean, what is the significance? 중요성, right? While we are drawing conceptual mapping, what about the key concept? Key concept is more important than other sub-concept, right? That's why you selected key concept, right? That is one of the example of significance, right? What is the significance in integration? what about the significance in differentiation, right? What about the most significant concept in quadratic curve, right? So that's why this brief definition summarizes many important things, right? Significance, difficulty, as well as the solution must be unknown, right? If solution is known to student, it's close to what? Exercise rather than problem, right? Makes sense to you? Therefore, take a look at this definition carefully. I think it might be helpful for you to think about what kind of mathematical essay problem you can develop for your final project. Also, more briefly, probably mathematical essay problem related to problematic task, right? Because it's not just only one problem usually, right? There is a big chunk of problem. So problem task can be think of this way. The word problematic can refer to a situation in which students are helped to see that their present knowledge is as yet insufficient to satisfy certain genuine needs or to answer questions that emerge from what is already known. I think this explanation points out many important things. In other words, a problematic situation or problematic task should consider this kind of situation. From what students already know to what? What students should understand for better understanding of that concept or any mathematical structures. Make sense to you? What is the problematic task? So anyway, if you are going to consider both of them, the definition as well as explanation, you may better understand, right? What kind of mathematical essay problem you should develop for your final project. Any question until now? I'm going to introduce some framework for introductory calculus in Israel. Compared to the any curriculum in other country, I think this is one of the curriculum. Take a look at the direction or guideline to develop the curriculum. Compared to Korean curriculum, it's a little different. Take a look at, for instance, basically, how can you approach, the calculus concept? One thing interesting to me, take a look at general goal is to get acquainted with the family of function. In other words, before high school, right? This is by the way, high school introductory calculus, right? Before maybe middle school and the first grade of high school, they're familiar with many different kind of function, right? Therefore, a general goal is to get acquainted with families of function. The problem is the known method of investigating function, build a table, draw graph, do not seem to work for more complex function. Basically, the main issue in order to develop student conceptual understanding of calculus, they approach to what? How to investigate function. A simple function, for instance, linear function, quadratic function, in a very simple way, right? You can easily investigate those kind of functions. However, if function is very complicated one, how can you investigate those kind of functions? How can you capitalize those kind of complex functions? That kind of question probably help students better understand. So sub-goal, find a new, more reliable analytic tool for investigating function. In other words, while you are teaching basic calculus, you can ask your student, what is the better tool to investigate function, more complex function, right? So most graphs, maybe until now, turn out to be almost linear when watched closely. Small neighborhood of a point is greater in large, the existence of linear approximation. So one way to approach, to investigate function, different kind of function, you can take a look at the small neighborhood. You already learned in analysis, right? How can you develop small analysis? But intuitively, still high school students can develop their idea about small neighborhood, right? But if you take a look at the small neighborhood, even if it's a complicated function, if you take a look at the graph of function by using small neighborhood, you still can say almost linear, right? Do you agree with that? For instance, quadratic curve, any cubic curve, right? Any complex function in high school, especially, right? If you take a look at, right, most of the function is kind of linear if you're drawing small neighborhood, like infinitesimal. Do you agree with that? Anyway, those kind of promising phenomena may be introduced, and then question to be answered like this: is the phenomenon about common enough to deserve attention? If answer to question 1 is yes, how shall we find the linear approximation? When you know how to find the linear approximation, how shall we use them to investigate function? Basically, linear approximation is one of the, I think, important concepts in calculus, but their approach, right, probably different from ours. Instead of introducing the basic concept of linear approximation, they kind of approach to the same concept by using what? How can you factorize more complex function? What kind of tool can you use? Very different approach, right? Make sense to you? The need of tool, investigating tool, probably motivate student, right, to study mathematics more. That is one of the reasons why they selected this kind of approaches. So therefore, think about one of the good mathematical essay problem. Probably they have learned already by using some pattern or some sequences, right? But you can change the sequences, following this step, and think about this question. Then all of a sudden, that is a very challenging problem. There's no solution, right? Because they never approach that way. This is kind of new approach. This is kind of new way to understand the same concept. Probably this is a better way, right? They can compare, right? They can decide, oh, this is the new insight to understand the same concept, right? This is very good way of approaching the same concept. So think about mathematical essay problem this way. I think that's a really good problem from my perspective, because the same concept but different approach provide what? Different insight for student better understanding of the concept. That makes sense to you? Any question regarding the problem? I know that's not easy. It's not obvious from time to time. That's why this is the whole semester group work for the final project. You're supposed to develop only one mathematical essay problem during the semester. I thought that's valuable. I'm going to also share all 10 problems, our 10 groups, right? Isn't it? Right. There are 10 groups. But you can see 10 different kind of problems, right? Other groups are going to develop. They are valuable asset, right, for your future use, from my perspective. oh, this is kind of problem might be useful, right, for better understanding of the mathematical concept. Or this kind of approach is very valuable, right? Maybe for you yourself, right, to develop any mathematical problem in the near futures. That's why this is a good experience from my perspective. So please, provide your energy and your enthusiasm to develop mathematical essay problem. Okay, I just bring some idea. What kind of mathematical essay problem is better than the others? Just think about how to access. So maybe some of you already interested in developing assessment item. That's a really good way. But as I said many times during the semester, the most difficult part in math education, developing assessment item, from my perspective, because you should understand all area related to math education. Then you can develop mathematical essay, mathematical assessment item. Any question? Then I'm going to moving forward to rubrics, evaluation standards. After summarizing some key concept, I'm going to assign the third miscellaneous item. Take a look at a third miscellaneous items. Develop a holistic rubric of the two problems that you selected in the midterm exam. I already uploaded in the EKU website, right? You can see what kind of problem you already solved. Please make sure that there is no between score. See the example. I'm going to explain by using example today. What is the meaning of a holistic rubric? By November 6th, by this Thursday, okay? It's not that much take your time, I don't think. So probably you just spend maybe one or 2 hours, okay? So take a look at then what is the holistic rubric. Tomorrow, maybe Thursday, I'm going to explain analytic rubric, 2 different kind of rubric, okay? Assessment standard. Rubric evaluation standard. In making evaluation standard, there are 2 different kind of rubric. It is called rubric or evaluation standards or evaluation, maybe what is called evaluation standard or rubric. Either way is fine. But anyway, holistic rubric, analytic rubric are 2 are representative in making evaluation standard. Today, I'm going to cover holistic rubric first. Maybe on Thursday, next Tuesday, I'm going to cover analytic rubric. Okay? Holistic rubric. So 1980s, Malone developed, generally holistic rubric. You can think about general holistic rubric first. What is the main purpose of the holistic rubric? Take a look at it. 0, non-commencement. The student is unable to begin the problem or hand in work that is meaningless, right? What is the 0 point mean out of, for instance, 5 or 4? So Mellon suggested, even if a student writes something on the problem, right? Mathematical essay problem or just, some writing problem. So if there's nothing, that is obviously 0 point, right? Do you agree with that? Because nothing written, right, on that problem. Although some student write something, but something is not related to that problem. That's going to be still 0 point, right? Do you agree with that? So therefore, the non-commencement means the student is unable to begin the problem or hand in work that is meaningless in terms of what? Solving that problem, right? It is called 1 point approach, means the student approach the problem with meaningful work. It's hard to say though, what is meaningful work, because depending on a person or a teacher's perspective, it might be different, right? Meaningful work. indicating some understanding of the problem, but an early impact is reached. Basically, for instance, there are 4 steps, right? Out of 4 steps, student approaches just only the first step. So how much point do you want to provide? Probably out of 4 steps, student approaches only 1 step, right? You can provide only 1 point, probably out of 4, right? That's going to be one example. The second, substance, sufficient detail demonstrate that the student has proceeded toward the rational solution, but major error or misinterpretation obstruct the correct solution process. In other words, students solve and probably student provide some wrong answers, right? However, there are major error in his or her steps. So therefore, it's going to be considered, substance, as you can see right here. But the sufficient detail demonstrate, right? This is going to be important. In other words, just only 1 sentence or not just only 1 or 2 sentences, right? Sufficient detail demonstrates should be provided in the second level of, holistic rubric standard. Third, result. The problem is very nearly solved. Minor error produced an invalid final solution. In other words, you still need to define minor errors, right, in problem solving, but it's not that easy from time to time. But in terms of a category, probably the 3 point out of 4, probably some just a minor mistake or minor error can be considered in this category. The fourth, completion. An approach method is applied to yield a valid solution. In other words, the answer is correct, the problem solving process is correct, then obviously you should provide full credit, right? Think about this kind of different kind of level of problem solving. It is called non-commencement approach, substance, result, and completion. So whatever it is called, it is not important. The most important things to you is to understand what? Different kind of level. Or how can you differentiate, right? In terms of developing holistic rubric, what kind of level you should consider. One is what? None of the correct statement, right? 0. What is 1? Just, 1 or 2, right? Correct statement related to what? The problem. What about second? Sufficient detail demonstrate. However, what? There are major errors, major issue. What about third one? The problem is almost solved, but there is what? Minor mistake. What about fourth? Obviously, problem solving process is correct, and what? The answer is correct. Makes sense? What about the problem solving is correct, but the answer is incorrect? Then probably this one, right? You can often see those kind of solution, right? Some students solved it correctly, but all of a sudden, while they're finding out answer, right, they wrote incorrect one, right? I think you experienced a lot. Anyway, can you see the generally holistic rubric? What kind of structure generally used to develop holistic rubric or holistic evaluation standard? I'm going to give you 1 or 2 minutes. Take a look at this problem and develop your own rubric based on my comments. In other words, at a certain restaurant, 2 salads and 3 burgers cost $8.85. But 1 salad and 4 burgers cost $9.30. Okay? Then what is the cost of the 1 salad then? This is not problem solving. Okay? This is rubric you're supposed to develop. So what kind of rubric you can develop? Think about it. I'm going to give you 2 or 3 minutes. And then after developing your own rubric, and then I'm going to give you small group discussion. You can start now. Before start explanation, so you need to know one important thing. One thing, even if you are going to develop a tentative rubric, your own tentative rubric, it's not going to be completed before seeing student actual responses, right? That is obvious. Any rubric cannot be complete, right, without using student actual responses. That's going to be problematic. That's why in the final project, I'm going to ask you, you should develop your own rubric based on your experience during the half of the semester. I'm going to continue to cover concept of rubric, how to analyze rubric, how to develop rubric. But after looking at the student actual responses to the mathematical essay problem, you may change your rubric, right? Because, my scoring system has a problem. In other words, it's not fair enough. What is the most important factor in terms of developing rubric? Fairness, right? This is fair enough to all students. That's going to be most important factor you should consider while you're developing rubric. Anyway, so I'm going to just to show you, just based on, that's why you need to practice. Just think about the 4 level of different expectation, right? So that's why I'm asking you just need to follow the 4 level. I explained previously, right? Probably this way is the think way. 0 point, obviously, no mathematical meaningful work is present, right? This is 0 point. What about 1 point? I added this way. The answer is correct. But no set of one explanation of any one is shown. What do you think? From my perspective, if answer is correct, but there is no explanation, even if I'm going to ask explanation, probably I'm going to give maybe 1 point out of 4. You may disagree with me, but this is my perspective in terms of problem solving. Because I asked specifically, please show your problem solving process. But student didn't show it and write answer. I think you already discussed, right? After just try and error, continuously try and error and then find out solution. Oh, this is the one. And then she or he didn't write problem solving process, right? From my perspective, that's going to be probably maybe because the answer is correct. I cannot give 0 point, right? Because answer is correct. But I don't think if student didn't show problem solving process, I don't think their solution deserve much credit from my perspective. Anyway, you already talked about this issue, right? Think about it. Or at least one correct step was made toward the solution. Almost a similar level of understanding from my perspective. You may disagree with this issue. But anyway, as a teacher, you can decide. But from my perspective as a math educator, I don't think just following their own way, but the way is not that mathematical. In other words, just very elementary approach, right? Just plugged in a lot of number and all of a sudden finding out solution. That's not going to be mathematical reasoning or mathematical process. That's why I just that kind of solution deserve less credit than other solution. Or maybe second one, the setup is correct, and like the 2 linear pages, right? The setup is correct, and at least one other correct and useful step is taken. Maybe just after showing 2 linear equations and then some correct statement and blah blah blah. Probably that's going to be maybe 2 points out of 4, right? And then, but the solution contains at least one conceptual error or something, right? This is going to be major, I think, error from my perspective. Also, third one, method or step suggests that a correct solution is possible, but the strategy used is appropriate and the explanation is included. The solution might contain a minor arithmetic mistake, but it has no conceptual error. In other words, think about this way. There's no conceptual error after looking at the solution, but there's minor mistake. In other words, some arithmetic mistake, or just while they're subtracting, while they're so calculating something, just at the beginning of the calculation they made a mistake, and thus the answer is not correct. Then probably I'm going to consider maybe 75% out of 100 from my perspective. Even if the answer is correct, if there's no problem solving process, only 25% I consider. But maybe this one is debatable from my perspective. Maybe many math educators in this way. Anyway, think about it. Obviously, the first one, obtain a correct solution regardless of method. Sufficient evidence or explanation of the work must be shown. But regardless of method, you should be carefully used, right? As I said, if a solution is just plugged in by using try and error, I don't think that is the method. Okay? Method means systematic method, mathematical method. Okay? Do you understand? I mean, so in Korean, what is it? 가강법? 또 뭐예요? 또 뭐가 있어요? 대입법? 또 뭐가 있어요? 세 가지가 있잖아요. 가강법, 대입법 또 뭐가 있어요? 뭐 그래프를 쓰든지, 그죠? You can use the graph. Anyway, but those kind of solution is a mathematical approach. Anyway, I hope you better understand holistic rubric. Let's take a look at one more concrete example. Let me show you, some student actual responses, and then you can better understand, how to develop holistic rubric. Take a look at very simple problem. Can you solve this problem? It's not a complicated one. That's why I just brought a simple one. You don't have to worry about the mathematics. You need to worry about the rubric. That's why I brought in a simple one. After showing, do you understand the subtraction, right? Ones place, tens place, and then adding. How can you solve this problem? How do you think the student would use this strategy in the problem below? Can you solve? And then I'm going to show you different kind of solution student develop. Why don't you solve this problem? What is the correct answer? I'm going to give you 1 minute because it's a simple problem. Let me show you how many different kind of answer is possible. Even though it's a very simple problem, right? You may expect only one solution, right? But actually, if you are going to take a look at student solution, you can see a lot of different kind of answers. Take a look at, for instance, I made this kind of holistic rubric. In other words, correct generalization of the strategy and correct answer. This is obvious, right? Second one, correct generalization of the strategy, but the computation error. Do you agree with that? Out of 2 points. And incorrect generalization of the strategy. What do you think? This rubric. Out of 4, right? 2 is correct strategy, but the computation error. But take a look at it. This is, I think, most of you already solved, right? Do you agree with that? What about this one? And what about this one? This is minus 44, this is minus 4. This is 260, this is 300. Right? Based on my problem, I cannot subtract any point here, right? Even though this is not the best. Right? Do you agree with that? I should give them full credit because I didn't specify in my problem, right? You need to solve each unit. I didn't specify. You just need to use the strategy. That's why I should provide just the full credit in this problem, from my perspective. Because the problem is where it is, not problem solving itself, right? The problem comes from problem itself, right? Do you agree with that? Problem didn't specify how to solve, right? That's why I need to provide full credit from my perspective. That's why problem making is so important. You need to specify if you want some specific way of approach to the same problem. What about this one? Obviously, mistake, right? This one is correct. -4, -40, 300. But all of a sudden, answer is 266. Computation error, right? Strategy is correct. That's why I consider 2 points. What about this one? Made a mistake, right? 37 -5, 40, 300. This is, as you can see, this is why you need to collect student actual responses. Even if you are going to consider very simple problem, this is very simple problem, right? You didn't expect this kind of a lot of different kind of answer, right? But I'm going to show you a lot of different kind of answer. That's why I consider this one is, even though this is a minor mistake, but I do think this student understand strategy. That's why I'm considered just in the 2 point out of 4. What about this one? Even though there is no minor, but I don't think this one is kind of debatable. But from my perspective, this student may not understand the strategy completely because this is -4, 40, 300. That's why it concludes 336. This one also, I don't know. You may need to interview this student to better understand why just she or he solved this way. But I cannot completely understand. But the problem is the answer is correct. Right? Do you want to provide some point? At least in this problem, I don't think answer is not important issue, right? The strategy, as a teacher, right? Understanding strategy is the most important factor in this problem, at least. That's why even if 256 answer is correct, maybe she can solve in this way. Think about this way. After starting, for instance, okay, this is the 1, not 113. What is it then? 3, 6, and 1 and 3, and this is 6, 4, 5, and 2. By using standard algorithm, without understanding, student invented algorithm, right? They can solve, and then all of a sudden, I need to use the strategy, and then she or he used without understanding, just plug in any number, right? That's possible from my perspective. That's why I just consider just 0 point without giving any point. Because what is the main purpose of this problem? Understanding strategy, right? Do you agree with that? That's why every problem you should emphasize what is the key concept in the problem solving. Similarly, you need to think about what is the most important factor in your problem solving, right? That's why even if this case, 256, the answer is correct, but the answer is not important issue, at least in this problem solving, right? Because understanding strategy is the most important one. Anyway, think about it. What about this one? I'm going to give you 1 or 2 minutes, and then I'm going to give you student actual responses. First of all, you need to think about it. Answer is this way. Write a 2 division story problem that illustrates 24 divided by 6. The problem should be based on 2 different views, 1 model of division. In elementary school, this is one of the important problems because, as I emphasized many times, right? Division can be interpreted 2 different ways. One is sharing, the other is what? Partitive, right? What is sharing? I have 24 efforts, right? But there are 6 students. I'm going to distribute 24 effort to 6 students. That is the sharing, right? What about partitive? I have 24 length of, for instance, right? Some maybe any length, right? Any rod or any just maybe 24 centimeter this one, right? But if you're going to decide unit, 6 units, right? How many the cutting possible or something like that. This is obviously a different approach. That is the main purpose of this problem. In other words, student or pre-service teacher can understand 2 different views of division. Right? While I'm grading, I realized, student, take a look at, for instance, 2 different models. 8A, you can simply understand, but to take a look at 6 points. If attempt at sharing division does not mention explicitly that sharing is equal, take a look at, for instance, the problem one, carefully look at. She baked the 24 cookies, right? She gave them to 6 of her friends. How many cookies did each friend get? What do you think? While I'm grading student actual response, I realized, oh, this is problematic. Because I have 24 cookies, but I distribute what? 6 students. What possible? I can give her 1, 2, right? 3, 4, right? I didn't say equally. That's why all of a sudden, oh, this is problematic. I need to change my rubric, right? In terms of holistic rubric. That's why 6 point was considered. In other words, equally distributed is another important thing in terms of explanation. Do you agree with that? You cannot share 24 cookies, right? With your 6 classmates or 6 your friends, right? Without saying equally, right? That's not going to be, right, division problem. Do you agree with that? So equal distribution is most important factor, right, in terms of sharing division, right? Otherwise, I can distribute differently, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, something like that. That's going to be problematic in terms of division. Also, 2 different stories only in the same model. Some of students just write 2 different story problem, but all of a sudden I realize they're using the same model. In other words, 2 story problem based on what? Sharing division. Right? That's going to be, therefore I consider only half of the % out of total. Do you agree with that? Anyway, the other problem you can easily solve. Probably holistic rubric you can take. You can take a look at also by using PPT. That's why I revised the holistic rubric after providing the tentative rubric. We don't have enough time. I'm going to show you problem 3. This is a very simple problem. Probably in middle school and high school, this kind of reasoning can be used. But this is a very simple one. Below is the one student solution to finding a sum. In other words, they just added, ones place, tens place, 100 place, similarly, right? Like in a subtraction to problem 1. And then, how could you use this student method to help your class understand the standard addition algorithm? After showing student invented algorithm, right, you can ask, how can you use this kind of student invented algorithm to explain standard algorithm? How can you grade this problem? For instance, after showing the quadratic equation or quadratic formula, right? So how can you use this quadratic formula to explain, to finding out what? Solution, right, of quadratic function, right? So those kind of problems can be asked, right, many times. So how can you grade? Just think about it. what kind of structure do you want to make in this problem solving in terms of holistic rubric? There are three important things, right? First of all, student understand what? Student invented the algorithm, right? Second one, student understand what? Standard addition algorithm, right? Third one, what? How can you use in terms of relations between two different standards, right? Do you agree with that? So in order to analyze holistic rubric, you should see mathematical structure in that problem, right? Do you agree with that? At least in this problem, you should emphasize three important things. Take a look at on the back. Take a look at on the back. This is out of 10 points. Problem 3. A model explanation. The explanation describes clearly what? Three different kinds of perspective. Take a look at, for instance, what the standard algorithm entails, right? And part B, what the student solution entails. And part C, how the steps in A and B are related and some reasonable suggestions for helping the student see this relation. Then, we are going to consider full credit. Do you understand? Why I consider three different kinds of structure, right? In terms of grading. So therefore, in holistic rubric, you need to develop your own structure. Oh, this is the problem solving, standard problem solving or representative problem solving. How can I grade? I'm going to distribute evenly each point, right? For instance, I'm going to distribute it even, almost even, but I more emphasize the part C. Because from my perspective, part C is more important than part A and B. Make sense to you? Therefore, in order to make any holistic rubric, first of all, you need to understand solution first. And then, how can you structuralize? Okay? What am I going to do to structuralize the holistic rubric? That's going to be important thing. So based on two problems in the midterm exam, okay, you need to think about how can you develop holistic rubric. Basically, one structure you can use, obviously this one, right? I already explained along the structure, basic structure. You can use. But you need to carefully look at the whole point if you're going to select, right? Any problem. Some problem out of what? 1 point, right? Some problem out of what? 1.5. Makes sense? There are only two different kinds of problem in the midterm exam. One problem, one kind out of 1 point, right? The other kind out of what? 1.5 points, right? Based on that point, you need to develop holistic rubric. How can you grade? Make sense to you? And then, if you're going to bring the holistic rubric, I'm going to compare each other. And then we are going to have discussion time next time, okay? Not this Thursday, next Tuesday. Make sense to you? And then you can better understand, oh, this is the better way to understand holistic rubric. Make sense to you? So by Thursday, this Thursday, you should submit two different kind of rubric based on midterm exam. Any question? 다 이해했죠? 자, 다시 한번 설명해 줄게요. 자, develop holistic rubric of two problems that you selected in the midterm exam. How many problems in midterm exam? 24. So you can select only 2 out of 24. And please make sure there is no between score. In other words, this kind of example, for instance, if you were to consider 0, 0.5, 1, but some problem can be 0.8 or 0.2. This is not good rubric, okay? Based on, even though you cannot find out all representative example, but your scoring should consider all possibility. Make sense to you? Anyway, see the example by November 6th. Just last funny story. Take a look at. 10대 뭐라고요? 꿈을 위해 공부에 미쳐라. 20대는 뭐예요? 공부에 미쳐라. 30대는 뭐예요? 다시 공부에 미쳐라. 40대는 뭐예요? 제가 40대인데 공부 다시 시작하라. 50대는 공부하다 죽어라. 재미없어요? 자, 9개월까지 2개를 우리 만들어 제출하고 오늘 여기서 마치겠습니다.